We are officially being recorded. Thank you so much for that, Mark. Okay, guys, we got an icebreaker. When you look at this, oh yeah, by the way, the title of today's training is Work Readiness, Self-Care, Hygiene. Now, when you're seeing this, can you guys see my screen okay? Give me a thumbs up if you can see my screen. Awesome sauce. We have our service provider here, and we have our client in the background having a meltdown. Our service provider is thinking about all these beautiful things that they'd rather be doing. So the icebreaker is I'd rather be. So type in the chat, name, agency, and what you would rather be doing right now. Let's try to have a little bit of fun here today. It looks like Lucy would rather be golfing, airplane. I see drinks with friends. I see the beach. I see gaming. I see massaging, right? Doesn't look like she wants to help her buddy in the background. So as we are doing our icebreaker, I'll give you guys a moment to go ahead and type that in. We're going to continue on and give a little overview of JobTrain. So I know a lot of you guys are familiar with our programs and services, but some of you who are not familiar with our programs and services, we've been in existence for 55 plus years in the Bay Area, primarily San Mateo County. This is our second year coming to Santa Clara. This is year 2. So our primary goal is to make sure that our homeless and housing systems have all the support that they need for employment and training programs. That's our primary focus. So we have tons of services at JobTrain at large. Our Menlo Park services host the EDD department. Kenyatta College, we have Nova, we have wellness services provided by Stanford, we have an on-site preschool. Our Menlo offices, we provide evening classes, ESL classes, computer literacy classes, GED classes. We are in conjunction with 5 Keys Charter Schools. They are in our correctional facilities in Menlo as well as Santa Clara. So awesome stuff there. Easiest way to learn about our programs and services is to click on the link. Once all this is done and over with, you guys will have a copy of this and all of the links will be hyperlinked. The fastest way to get connected is always clicking there. We're always adding lots of cool stuff to our website. Recently, we added a Tech for Success portion, which basically enables our clients to have technology access, laptops, hotspots, computer training courses. We just started our virtual empowerment program that actually provides in-person training for 5 individuals and gives them all the training that they need for 4 weeks straight. At the end of that training, they receive their own laptop to take home free of charge. Awesome stuff. So a little bit about how clients are eligible for Santa Clara County. In terms of JobTrain at large, we do not have any zip code barriers for our Menlo Park offices, okay? Santa Clara County is a little bit different. We have 3 programs down this way. We have our rapid rehousing and our homeless prevention program, which is governed underneath OSH and Destination Home. We also have our CalFresh employment training program for our CalFresh participants throughout the county. And more recently, we are working with the city of San Jose. And this program here is awesome because clients in the city of San Jose making less than $82,000 a year can self-refer. And with that, meaning they don't need an agency to send the referral, they can just self-refer on their own. Now, if you are referring a client and you are connected to HMIS, we have launched our official work readiness assessment via HMIS. It is a brand new process to this county, and the long-term goal is for it to emulate the VI SPDAT score. In the future, pretty soon as you type in that work readiness assessment, we'll be able to spit out a specific algorithm that will expedite you in the proper bucket, right? That's down the road. But for right now, it's a way to gather all of the barrier information that we need in order to make a proper assessment and to make sure that the client has everything that they need so that they're self-sufficient moving forward. Once we receive the referral, the outreach attempts begin. The outreach attempts can be found within the service portion of the HMIS portal. So at the very, 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 very top, where all the client profile information there, you can see the service outreach information, you can find the work readiness assessment, and you can track your client's information in real time after the referral has been processed. Once the referral has been processed, your client is officially enrolled. Now, we understand that it has been an uphill battle with any new system, so we appreciate your patience and understanding with the process. The fastest way to get your client through this queue is inviting them to our drop-in hours, which we'll go over in a little bit. But essentially, if your client, for whatever reason, doesn't have an HMIS number, prime example, if they're within the domestic violence portion of the homeless prevention sector, they would not be active in this particular portal. However, we do, sorry, moving too fast here. We do have a paper form, also hyperlinked here, that they can fill out, and then you can upload it that way and send it to us that way, okay? Because we realize that it's a separate database for the domestic violence section of the homeless prevention. Also, we have a work readiness assessment workflow here. That hyperlink is there. It could also be found in our HMIS SCC portal as well. So some friendly reminders when you are doing that assessment. This is our official referral. We are no longer receiving paper referrals except for domestic violence agencies that I mentioned earlier. So please, 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 when you're filling out this information, the most important thing I can remind you guys is to update contacts tab. Once that referral is processed, we receive a looker report. And if the information is not, the contact information is not within the HMIS portal, that will hinder your referral from being processed as fast as it possibly can. There's been a lot of gaps on the contact tab. So please, 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 rule of thumb, everyone, make sure that that contact tab is fully updated so we get in contact with your client as fast as possible, okay? Let's see here. I'm gonna go ahead and pause there. Eli, should we take a look at the chat? Mark, should we take a look?
Yeah, we had a lot of responses to the great responses to the icebreaker. A lot of great imaginings that people are doing. No questions so far.
Awesome, awesome. So, okay, so let's get right to it. So I know you guys are wondering, what is this all about? Right? What is JobTrain doing now? We pride ourselves in being a holistic agency, and we realize that what we do in terms of ourselves and how we carry ourselves directly affects the work that we do in the community, right? So essentially, good self-care management is good case management, right? Hygiene. That word just kind of like, hygiene, what is that? What are we talking about here, right? That implies good or bad. You can have good hygiene, you could have bad hygiene. I don't know if you guys remember that commercial back in the day, sure or unsure, right? How sure are you about taking care of yourself? I feel like in this profession, we don't talk about it enough, right? We are not just our job. We are mother, father, sister, brother, cousin, auntie, uncle, caregiver, priest, preacher, right? Whatever. we take on all of these forms in our caregiving roles outside of our professional roles, which are already really burdensome. So if you look here at this image, which I love, right? As care professionals, we are expected to be all of these things represented in the purple and the blue, right? Our clients, when they come to us, they want us to be these nurturing fairies of goodness and grace and resources and housing and, you know, uplift passes. And what about my dog? And I know that the lease says I can't have it, but right, all of these things, they're expecting us to be warm, welcoming, encouraging, empathetic, receptive, calm, engaging, right? And they want us to hold all these things for them. These are the things that we're holding for them. Sadness, despair, heartache, grief, pain, agony, suffering, right? Even just the sound of it makes you cringe. It's important to understand how just heavy the work that we do. And then you sprinkle COVID on top, right? So this training was kind of meant to just give everyone a woosah moment, if you will, right? Like, let's just take a break on ourselves and have some self-empathy on the work that we do and how hard it is every day. And because we don't have this separation of space, we take it on even more. You know, speaking from personal experience, my daughter is on the couch, I'm sick here, you know, training. That's the virtual space that we're in, right? We have to lean in. So the overarching theme of this whole training is really emphasizing the importance of putting yourself first in some form or fashion. Because if you don't put yourself first, then you're not going to be able to figure out how to help your client. Period, point blank, right? Just to make it plain, right? There's various types of self-care. You could be asking for help, spending time alone, putting yourself in. I mean, these are the things that we know, but every now and again, we have to stop and really take stock. Like, am I really doing this? And why is this particular client triggering me like this right now? Should I really be this upset? Like, is it really that client, or is there something going on with me internally, right? I feel like, you know, whenever we went to college and we said, or when we were younger and they're like, well, what do you want to be when you grow up? We're like, save the world, right? Or maybe that was just Kenya, crazy Kenya, right? Save the world. Nobody talked about the price of that and what it does to you physically, mentally, emotionally, financially sometimes, right? Student loans, right? We're going to just stop and take a moment to talk about it, okay? What we're here for. So with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and pass the mic to my man, Gerald. Gerald's going to talk a little bit about the importance of communication and case management and how in a virtual space, it's not always so easy. Go ahead, Gerald.
In Kenya and Gerald.
Kenya.
Oh, sorry. I was just going to interrupt because we got a few questions during that slide about the referral process, I believe. This be a good time to pause and address them? Sure thing. All right. Sorry about that, Gerald. So first question, how long does it take between the referral and the client being able to get JobTrain services? It really varies. So I don't want to give just a generic answer because it really varies depending on, one, was the contact information in the work readiness assessment? Was the client picking up the phone? Were they responsive? Oftentimes it's a lot of cat and mouse. We have Calendly built in. I encourage all of you all to use that as a resource as well in order to expedite communication with the staff. But we also have drop-in hours. If you want to skip your clients through the referral queue, use our virtual drop-in hours. Shout out to the case managers that have taken us up on that offer. That is the fastest way to get your clients through the queue. We know that we want it to be immediate, but it doesn't work like that. There's only 5 people with a whole, like 25 agencies that we're working with.
So thank you so much for your patience and understanding with that. But what I will tell you is that we're a lot faster than the housing referral queue. There's some people still waiting for permanent supportive housing 7 years later. So we're definitely faster than that. And anything that's new when it comes to large system overhauls, there's going to be a bit of a curve with it. So we appreciate your patience. If you have a client that is really, really like excited and eager, bring them to our drop-in hours. We'll get started immediately.
Yeah. Thanks, Kenya. Next question is, does immigration status matter?
In order to be a JobTrain client, no. However, our primary focus is to help individuals obtain employment. And so if you know your client is not eligible for that, then that might not be the right fit. We do have tons of free workshops like our ESL. We have tons of online workshops. They can utilize that route while they work on their citizenship status. It's not a hard no, but it's what's the game plan and what does that look like in terms of the trajectory of their success, right? So what we don't want to do is set individuals up for failure. But we do have connections just, you know, in terms of just legal advice and places to point them to. We work hand in hand with IRC, International Rescue Committee. They're an awesome resource. And we're actually bolstering our services when it comes to that, trying to figure out what we can do to help with that population. So the answer outright is no, but don't put your client in a situation where they're not going to be able to help themselves like with the next 6 months to a year, if that makes any sense. Because not everybody qualifies for citizenship. So without getting into too much red tape, yeah, the short answer is yes, but just be diligent about what that plan really looks like for your client.
And then I think this relates to the entering contact information into HMIS. What should folks do if the client doesn't have contact information at that point? Like, should they maybe enter contact information for someone who can get in touch with the client?
Yeah,
or...
that's what I was gonna say. Next point of contact. Yeah, how are they getting in contact with their client? However they're getting in contact with their client, that's the information that they should give us and be very instrumental in helping us coordinate that. If it's only meeting in person, that's fine. We're meeting in person. Gerald and John are meeting clients live and in person. So we can arrange that for that to happen. But first order of business and first step in work readiness is helping your client get an email at the very least, because they need to, you know, apply for jobs. So if you have a client that's interested in work readiness services or work services in general, you should have a conversation like, hey, Billy, let's set up your email since you don't have a phone number and, you know, they got to get in contact with you. If a job wants you, how are they going to contact you? So I don't know if they're still giving out Obama phones, but that would be something that you can help your client with, helping them get a phone, helping them get an email account that's free, so that they can be ready for work services when the time is right, excuse me.
And one last question popping up. Does JobTrain offer entrepreneur workshops for undocumented clients who want to start their own small businesses?
Not at the moment, but we have been in conversations with other partners in the community that have co-ops to that extent. And there's been conversations of possibly emulating something to that extent. But given our mission and given the fact that it's a pilot program, we have to be really, really, I don't want to say realistic, but realistic about what we can do in the short period of time that we have to do it in, right? So we really, really depend on our community partners to help with that. Yeah.
Well, it's very exciting that it's something that you're looking into at this point.
Yeah.
Right,
Somos Mayfair. I was trying to think of the name of the agency. Somos Mayfair has a program like that. So we've been talking with them about it a little bit.
Yeah. Well, that's all the questions that I see in the chat at the moment.
Awesome sauce. Okay, go ahead, Jerry.
Okay. We're going to be talking about, in this particular case, communication. I mean, it's key as providers, whether you're providing legal services, medical services, social service, employment. The key in communicating with your client is just that, communication. Ordinarily, in a non-COVID environment, if you look at the little icon to your right, basically, this is the mode of communication that we ordinarily would be utilizing in our discussions with other individuals. You will notice that words comprise 7% of what's being communicated. Body obviously is 55%, which is a large portion. And the tone of what's being said is 38%. But in a COVID environment, we basically, this middle portion, the body, 55%, is non-existent to some extent, unless you're conversing with somebody, for example, like what we're doing now over Zoom or any other kind of mode of communication electronically. But so for the most part, we're going to be having to depend on words and what words are being said, how they're being said, the tone that's being reflected in the communication process. So given that, we need to basically enter into communication with the little components that you see on the left. There has to be, you need to connect with understanding and empathy. You need to recognize the need and concerns of others, and you need to develop listening and verbal clues, verbal skills and verbal clues as to what's being said and how it's being said. Asking the right questions, when to ask those questions, the types of questions you need to ask. And then there is the other component, the emotional intelligence, which we will get into down the road. Kenya will make a very cogent presentation on that. So, but for the most part, what will be key in any kind of interaction with your clients is how you communicate with them. I'm going to show you a small, short video that will basically exemplify what we're talking about. Kenya, if you could just click on that.
Okay, 1 second. Something else to mention while that's loading. I love this little character. It has each of them in a mood, right? They're in their mood. Oh, wait, hold on. Hold that.
Writing's not that easy, but Grammarly can help. This sentence is grammatically correct, but it's wordy and hard to read. It undermines the writer's message, and the word choice is bland. Grammarly's cutting.
We can hear, but we can't see yet.
Can you see now? Sweet.
Think about how much information you get every day from listening. Your boss, your colleagues, your clients, and your suppliers may communicate with you often. So will your family and friends. How much of what all these people say do you pay attention to? How much are you actually remembering from these conversations? Chances are it's a lot less than you think. A lot of times we act as if we're listening to the other person, but the reality is that our minds are racing to other topics or already planning what we're going to say in return. This means that we can miss important things that the other person is saying. Active listening is when you make a conscious effort to hear and understand people so that you get the complete message. There are several things you can do to become an active listener. First, you need to pay attention. We know this is a bit obvious, but it's the most important part of active listening. For instance, make eye contact with the person talking to you. Ignore outside factors like other conversations so that you can focus solely on what the person is saying. Most importantly, put your own thoughts on hold. Resist the urge to start planning out what you're going to say in return. You also need to show the other person that you're listening to them. You can nod your head, smile, and say yes occasionally. All of these signals let the other person know you're still with them. Providing feedback on what the other person has just said is another important part of active listening. For instance, all of us hear information through our own personal filters and judgments. This can affect our understanding. To make sure you heard and understood the message correctly, paraphrase it or repeat it back to the person. You can also ask questions to get more information, but make sure that you listen to what they're saying before you plan your response. You also need to avoid interrupting when they are speaking. Once they're finished, you can respond appropriately and with an honest answer or opinion. Active listening is a skill that all of us should use more often. The better you are at listening, the more information you'll receive. This can pay off with big rewards in your career and strengthen your bonds with family and friends. You can find out more about active listening in the article that accompanies this video.
Okay, awesome.
Okay. So what you saw there was basically four tips as to how you basically have to approach and engage a person that you're going to be talking to and communicating with. Obviously, in a COVID environment, eye contact is not going to be possible, especially if you're making your discussions over a phone or through text, but mainly through a phone. Unless you are, like I said, you are in a Zoom conversation, you need to be present. You need to be in the moment with your client. By showing that, you're letting the client know that you are willing to listen and are going to be listening to what they have to say. Active listening involves you being present in the moment. And you do that in the conversations by, when you're talking to your client, by acknowledging what they're saying. Obviously, they're not going to see gestures, but what you can convey are certain things like, yeah, okay, and small interruptions by basically encouraging them to say, yeah, tell me more. Give me some examples. So basically, by encouraging your clients, by giving them those cues, those verbal cues, that you are listening to them. And obviously, feedback is important. By providing feedback, if you haven't taken any courses or any lessons in motivational interviewing techniques, I would encourage you to do so. But utilizing the questioning techniques in providing that communication with your client, the questions of who, what, where, when, why is going to be very valid because that it will indicate that you are listening to them. Tell me more. Why do you think that's the case? When do you think you'll be able to achieve these goals? So you're basically becoming active. You're engaging the client to respond to the kinds of cues and questions that you're going to be asking. And then lastly, don't interrupt. I mean, when you're listening to a client, try to compose yourself to inject any kind of feedback that is going to be interrupting the flow of conversation. And by all means, don't try to solve their problem. It's a process where you and they are arriving at a consensus where you are going to be helping them arrive at their own solutions So really, as a provider, whether you're a case manager, social worker, try to avoid trying to solve a problem for a client. And essentially, those are the keys that would promote positive and effective communication with one another.
On the flip side of that, if you're low on self-care hygiene or you have poor self-care hygiene, how might that affect your communication? Right? Type in the chat how you are affected when you're having a poor self-care hygiene week, a bad day, you feeling some type of way or whatever it is. Type in the chat how your communication is directly affected with your clients, right? How does that affect your communication with your clients, with your family, with your friends? We understand that this is a work session, but once again, like I said at the beginning of this, work is only a piece of what we do. So it's important to kind of zoom out that work lens a little bit and take personal stock and figure out how that works for you, right? How it affects your communications all across the board. I know for me personally, I'll share, if it's been a really long, stressful day, I'm a little bit snappy at my kids. I'll admit it. You know, you might not get the 2 donuts, you might just get 1. You know, I don't know. It really just depends. But I think that it's fair to say that your communication is directly affected by how you're feeling. Some people said it's harder to be patient, lack of attention to clients. Yep, perception, exactly. You might find yourself drifting or not quite understanding, right? Go ahead, Joe.
Yeah, it's important to know the mood that you're in, because the mood sets the tone for how you're communicating. And so you need to really take stock on that.
Right, right. And here are several reasons why you might be stressed out. Go ahead, Gerald.
Yeah, I mean, these are some of the stressors that we are engaged with on a daily basis. Every one of us is multitasking. We're actively trying to become active listeners. We're trying to come up with quick thinking solutions. We're planning for action as to what our next step is going to be. And injecting in all that is the component of being knowledgeable in cultural competency. So all of that plays into our roles as becoming positive models in our jobs and providing service for our clients. That takes its toll on a daily basis. And so, what do we do about that? How do we go about to really checking ourselves and whether we're going to be in the right frame of mind and in the right mood in providing the type of service that our clients need? Again, I'm going to show you a short video that will highlight some of the things that we need to take stock in. And keep in mind, as it states, this is during a COVID-19 environment.
Hello and welcome to Wellbeings, a short animation series with practical science-backed tips and tricks to reduce stress and enhance health and wellbeing. Today's tips come to us from our friends over at the Black Dog Institute, who've created a fantastic resource on the importance of self-care planning during COVID-19. We've included links to this resource below, so please check it out and share. 4 tips for creating a self-care plan. Self-care is often the first thing that gets sacrificed when life is busy and stressful, and people often think that taking time for themselves seems indulgent. But looking after your own well-being will help you get through this challenging time and will help you to better care for others. So let's take a look at the steps for creating a self-care plan. 1. Evaluate your coping skills. Examining your own habits is an important first step in developing a self-care plan. How do you typically deal with life's demands? Can you identify when you need to take a break? When faced with challenges, we can use either positive coping strategies or negative coping strategies. Here are some examples. Which strategies do you use? If you find yourself unable to cope with a situation or feel angry, snappy with others, or anxious, take a deep breath and refocus. It may be time to reevaluate your coping skills. 2. Identify your daily self-care needs. Take a moment to consider what you value and need in your everyday life. Then consider what you value and need during these difficult times of uncertainty. It may not seem like the right time to be planning, but time spent now will reap benefits later if you can get a plan in place. Remember, self-care extends far beyond your basic physical needs. Consider your psychological, emotional, spiritual, social, financial, and workplace well-being. 3. Reflect, examine, replace. Reflect. Reflect on the existing coping strategies you identified. What's working? What isn't working? Keep the helpful tools and remove anything that is unhelpful. Examine. Are there barriers to maintaining your self-care? Examine how you can address these barriers. Start taking steps towards incorporating new strategies that will benefit your health and well-being. Replace. Work on reducing and then eliminating negative coping strategies. If you find yourself using negative strategies, then begin by choosing one action you feel is most harmful and replace it with a positive one. Positive coping skills are an important part of your self-care toolkit. 4. Create your self-care plan. Once you've determined your personal needs and strategies, write them down. Your self-care plan can be as simple or as detailed as you need it to be. You may choose to keep a detailed plan on your desk and carry a simplified version in your wallet, in your purse, or on your phone. Look at it regularly, keep going back to it, and refining it as the situation with COVID-19 develops. For wellbeing resources specific to the needs of AOD workers, please visit workerwellbeing.nada.org.au. Thanks for watching.
Okay, so basically, before we engage in discussing what kinds of things that we're going to be providing for our clients, we really need to be in a right frame of mind, not just in the mind, but all aspects of who you are. The ancient Greeks really emphasized that you had to know yourself, and that is a key component in providing service. Before you're going to try to help others, where are you coming from? What's your frame of mind? How are you centered? You need to take stock in your emotional, your spiritual, your physical, and every other component that makes you who you are. And you need to be truthful to yourself, as Shakespeare pointed out. And so you need to have those things in mind before you start engaging anyone else. I think those tips that were brought out I think were valid. Evaluate what your coping skills are. If you don't have coping skills, I think you need to start looking at what kinds of skills you can develop to help you cope on a day-to-day basis, especially when it comes time when things become really hard and becomes a drain on you. Examine those coping skills, hopefully with positive strategies and not negative strategies. Okay, smoking, drinking alcohol while on the job, obviously that's not going to be helpful, because it raises something in your body that's just not going to be helpful for you, and it's not going to be helpful for your client. Identify and clarify what your self-care needs are. Okay, if you don't know what they are, take stock and take a moment to find out what they are, what they can be. Ask someone in your immediate family or friend or colleague as to what they do in their daily routines that calms them down. So look at that. Be reflective. Examine and replace. So reflect what those skills are, those coping mechanisms are. Examine whether they're positive or negative, And if they are negative, replace them. And then lastly, create a self-care plan for yourself and follow that plan dutifully as you can.
Yeah. And the cool thing about it is later, guys, we're going to have a moment for you guys to build your own. Yay! Aren't you excited? Yeah, no? Okay, that's fine. That's fine. It's okay to take care of yourself. It is okay.
Yeah.
So we want to talk about how to, we're doing all of these things, right? Daily task equals daily draining, right? We're doing all of these things. So how do we organize ourselves and our day, especially within a COVID space, when your desk becomes your kid's working station / dinner / lunch, right? It's all intertwined. Where does the separation end? So what we've realized is there's time management versus task management, right? I think time management, this whole thing around time management to me is a lie. You can't manage time. There's only 24 hours in a day, you guys. You can't manage that. You can't say, oh my goodness, I need one more hour, powers that be. Now there's 25 because today I just needed an extra hour. No, you can't manage your time, but you can manage your tasks in a proper order to free up more time, right? So you can only manage your tasks. So I feel that, in a social service realm, we don't really talk a lot about project management, task management. We talk about a lot of the sappy stuff, right? Get with your clients, cry with your clients, that's fine and dandy, but yet and still every case is a project. Every case you have to usher this project into success, right? Like any project that you're doing. And sometimes it's not always easy to do, right? Sometimes individuals might procrastinate, and this is for your clients too. So everything that we're sharing with you guys, please share this with your clients because they need to understand how important it is for them to take care of themselves as well. And I know all of our clients, because we share them collectively, right? Santa Clara County clients, they all procrastinate, right? Some service providers procrastinate, humans procrastinate, everybody procrastinates, right? But what we're realizing is there's reasons why people procrastinate. It's not because, Billy, well, you're going to be homeless. I know I'm going to be homeless. Are you scared? Yeah, I'm scared. Then why are you procrastinating, Billy? You got to get this done. I'm going to get to it, Susan, right? Or whatever. So we wanted to stop and take time to talk about 6 powerful task management tools for you guys just to help you go along. But before that, let's just take a pause and let's listen to this video about the true reason why our clients procrastinate or why humans procrastinate, okay?
If you are somebody who struggles with procrastination,
Uh-oh.
I'm a psychotherapist and I have a tip for you. Psychology study has found struggles with procrastination. I'm a psychotherapist and I have a tip for you. A psychology study has found that procrastination is not about poor time management skills, but instead is about avoiding unwanted negative emotions. Think about it. When we avoid a task like doing an assignment, it's not because our time isn't organized. It might just be because that assignment is really hard and it makes us feel dumb, or the material is overwhelming. So instead, we're avoiding emotions of sadness, confusion, frustration. It's not about the time management piece at all. So what do? 1, when we are procrastinating, we ask ourselves, what emotion am I avoiding and why? And 2, we try to regulate that emotion and find other ways that we can complete the task without causing that emotion to happen.
Wow, that's deep. So I know if you guys didn't hear it, might have been a little gritty, but essentially what she's saying is individuals avoid emotion, not the task itself. So if I have a client that, we've been talking about getting your driver's license, what is the big deal? Aren't you tired of being on the bus, you and your kids? Yes, I am. Digging deeper, come to find out, this client was in several car accidents. and they get triggered every time they get behind the wheel. So they weren't avoiding getting their driver's license because they were just being lazy. They were avoiding really literally getting behind the wheel because it's a trigger for them. So I'm saying all this to say, when we're working with clients, you know, it's important to understand why they're doing what they're doing and to understand how that affects what we're doing, right? So if we can stay as organized as possible, that'll help us. But when we're helping our clients become organized as possible, it's important to know why they do what they do. Does that make sense? Awesome sauce. You guys are such a great audience. Oh my goodness. I'm going to go ahead and show these tips.
Hello, I'm Jennifer Witt, Director of ProjectManager.com. Welcome today to our whiteboard session today on task management tips. So even though we're project managers, can you relate to having trouble managing your own task with all the chaos going on projects, all the things that are constantly changing? Well, there are 6 things that we want to bring to you today that maybe you may find helpful as well. So number 1 is establishing systems. We feel like it's very important to establish a system. Who, what, when, where, how, and being able to access that online. So establishing who's going to be responsible for identifying the task, estimating the task, how is it going to be done, when is it going to be done, so that information can get baselined in the project plan. And number 2 is performing sanity checks. A lot of times, I don't know about you, but I look on my list, and some of the things that I've gotten on my task list don't even have anything to do with the project. So people calling me, emailing me, giving me things to do that can get me off track if I'm not watching closely. So I get to where I perform a sanity check and say, is this on my project or related? If it is, then great. If it isn't, I need to evaluate, should it go on the project plan? And if it does, I need to get it incorporated and re-baseline if appropriate. Number 3, estimate realistically and baseline promptly. Again, evaluating with the sanity check, are the tasks that are on my list, are they really on the project plan? And seeing if I estimated those. A lot of times I get tasks that maybe I've never done before. Maybe someone else had done this task in the past and I just don't have the experience or maybe even the training. So I found myself having estimated that task incorrectly. So if later I find out it's going to need more time, then again, it's raising that issue, estimating things realistically, but re-baselining promptly so I myself don't get off track in the project. And number 4, escalating timely. And that's really calling out for help. So a lot of times there are things that we get involved in. Maybe we're waiting on information from someone else so that we can finish our task. And if we don't get it in time, then we find ourselves the one on the critical path holding up the project. So we need to escalate timely. Number 5 is requesting support. Again, we can find ourselves working on things that maybe we need help on or support on, getting issues addressed, issues handled. So it's important to request support when we need it. And then number 6, very important, is identifying resources that we may need. So a lot of the projects we do are new, so they've never been done before. Maybe some of the things that we're engaged in doing, we've never done before. So it's important to identify who, what, when, where, what do I need, what do you need to succeed, and identifying whether it's training, whether it's someone else maybe with a certain skill set that's required for the project, maybe that you don't have, that you need someone you need to delegate to, bring an outside contractor or someone from a different group to assist. So these are 6 things that I found for myself to be helpful in helping me manage my own tasks for the project so I can help keep the main project on track. At projectmanager.com, we've incorporated these best practices.
Okay. So just some helpful tips on how to stay organized and stay on task. Oftentimes that'll help mitigate a lot of the chaos that's happening internally if you can organize it externally, right? Share these tips with your clients, right? That's why we entitled it Work Readiness Self-Care. Getting yourself work ready, but also preparing your clients to become work ready themselves, right? The best thing to do is to lead by example. If you're talking about having your client be organized, if you yourself don't know how to articulate that, then you're not going to really, be of any service. So, does anybody have any questions, comments, concerns? Does this resonate with anybody? Task management versus time management? Is this a new concept? Feel free to unmute. We got a little time. My coworker in the background, apologies. Brian, are you trying to say something?
Never mind, I'll retract it. It's okay.
Are you sure?
Well, I mean, my question doesn't really have to do with, organizing and everything like that.
That's okay.
It's a case manager question.
Okay.
Well, so if a client's lease is over and they jump into a month, right? But their subsidy isn't over, say for whatever reason, like the tip program, I'm under tip, right? And so one of my clients is being served a 30-day notice, and they're still getting I don't want to say benefits. What's a better word for benefits? Services. He's still receiving services. So do I just like rehouse him until the stuff is over? Because I mean, he has 2 jobs, he's doing good, and I just been kind of put in this little position with between him and his landlord, so. And her reasoning for the 30-day notice is just wow, and I don't believe any of it. It's like on her contract. I can go back to this caseload and look it up, but I've just been in that little position.
Sounds like it's been weighing on you a lot.
Just yeah, and I've only been here since January, so it's just
right. Well, I think that whole conversation is probably a lot more longer than this meeting will let. I don't know, Juan, if you want to chime in real quick, but I encourage you to lean on the partners on your team, lean on your supervisor, figure out what you guys can do to advocate to get this client the help and the services.
Yeah, but lately in this past couple of weeks, we've been really busy, rearranging all this stuff. So I don't really want to burden people with help, because we're all busy trying to stay focused and
Right. But at the same time, a part of self-care, right, is speaking up for yourself and advocating so that everyone has the full support, right? It's just not your exclusive situation, right? It takes a village. We have to use a wraparound approach. That's the best way with clients. So I encourage you to get with your team. I encourage you guys to have a whiteboard session and figure out any and everything that you could do, because sometimes you need a team to help you think of something that you didn't think of before, right? So it sounds like you guys are on the right track, though.
Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome. Awesome sauce.
And Kenya, just while we're on the subject of asking for help and getting help,
if you are somebody who struggles with procrastination,
I want to remind everybody that we at Home Base are a resource for you. We're not case managers, but we do know a lot about the program rules, grant compliance, things like that, and sometimes we can point you to resources in the community that we've heard about. So any individual one of you can email us when you have questions on those things. Just want to put that out there.
Awesome. Thank you, Eli. For sure. Okay. Jared, did you want to say anything about this particular list? Very
No,
good.
it's just important that in the lists that you see here, that at certain points, for example, like taking a break, that's the time that you implement your self-care plan, and stick to it. You know, if you're thinking, no, I can't take a break right now, I really got to get this done. You know what? You're doing a disservice to yourself
and to your clients.
Yeah.
Totally. Thanks, Jer. So that leads us into our next topic, emotional intelligence. If you guys know what EQ is, emotional intelligence, how many of us have heard of that here? Yeah? Not too many thumbs up. Again, I can't see anybody all the way. Awesome sauce. So emotional intelligence refers to the ability to identify and manage one's own emotions and the emotions of others and how we interact with others, right? So key to emotional intelligence is becoming self-aware of how you yourself feel internally, right? And then be able to regulate that emotion once you recognize that there is an emotion, right? And then harness the motivation to continue on, have empathy for yourself, have empathy for others around you, and extend that empathy to get the job done, right? Whatever that looks like. That's where the social piece comes in at. So as you see, we have tons of videos in here. We don't have time to go through all of these videos, but like I mentioned earlier, this will be a resource given to you all. But just for a second, let's take a 3-minute and 42-second video about developing emotional intelligence and what that looks like. Okay, 1 second. Now, this to me is the most important thing ever, because if you yourself are feeling some type of way, how are you going to help your clients not feel some type of way, right? It don't really work like that. So you have to be grounded within yourself so that you can help others.
Hi there, welcome to Forward. Come on in.
No,
I'm Dr. Nate Favini. I'm our medical.
Emotional intelligence refers to the ability to recognize, interpret, and process emotions in yourself and others. While genetics, upbringing, and environment all play a role, there are steps you can take to develop your emotional intelligence over time. Get to know yourself. Emotionally intelligent people are self-aware. They have a realistic appreciation of their strengths and weaknesses and how they come across to others. Peer feedback is one way of improving your self-awareness and may uncover a few of your emotional blind spots. Learn your triggers. Linked to the notion of self-awareness is knowing how you are likely to respond in particular situations. Think about how you felt the last time you were under pressure. Did these feelings help or hinder you? Recognizing emotions and the source of these emotions can shift your emotional state. Empathize. Seeing things from someone else's perspective will help you understand their values and beliefs. This is important when it comes to motivating and engaging others. Make a conscious effort to get to know your colleagues. Ask open questions and actively listen to what they have to say, rather than simply waiting for your turn to speak. Be on the lookout for body language and other non-verbal signs, as these may tell you more than someone is willing to express out loud. Own your emotions. Part of being emotionally intelligent is about taking responsibility for the way you interact with others. If someone upsets you, pause and reflect on why their actions led you to feel this way, instead of reacting impulsively. Recognize that a conversation is a two-way interaction, and it takes two people to make you angry, sad, or frustrated. Go with your gut. Finally, listen to your body. If your stomach starts doing backflips every time you speak to a senior manager, or your muscles tense up before you go into a meeting, what does this tell you? Counterintuitive as it might seem, emotions can be a valuable source of information when making rational decisions at work. Remember, emotional intelligence isn't about suppressing emotions. It's about learning how to recognize, process, and channel them in a way that benefits you and your team. Enhancing your emotional intelligence requires effort, but it can be achieved with sustained practice.
All righty. So, way back when I used to teach this course when I worked with the WIOA Youth Department at Work to Future, and I used to tell the youth that we work with, this is how not to catch a case 101, and they would just start cracking up, right? But essentially, how do we regulate ourselves so that we're not led by our clients' emotions? Because clients come in, they're in crisis mode, they might be upset, throwing stuff, cussing, screaming, or whatever the case may be. I used to work at the Opportunity Services Center, so there was a whole lot going on over there. But all that to say, if me as the staff member, if I'm not baseline, how am I going to de-escalate? How am I going to be able to actively listen? How am I going to be able to really be attentive so that I know how to help my clients? Right? When we're irate, when we're losing our minds, what happens is this whole prefrontal cortex shuts down. That's where all your rational thought process, that's your critical thinking. This is your CPU. This is your central processing unit. This is where all your smart stuff happens. When this shuts off, we go caveman. This thing in the back, fight or flight activates, and we're going, and we're not thinking. Right? You hear people sometimes they black out, they see red, whatever the case may be, right? The first key to emotional intelligence is being aware of what it is that took you there in the first place, period. Then figuring out how to get back down as fast as possible, and then reflecting on how never to go there again. That's EQ, right? Oftentimes you hear IQ. What's your IQ? What was your SAT score? Blah, blah, blah. Your SAT score has nothing to do about how you regulate your emotions. You could be 6 figures at Facebook Plus and still go home and beat your wife at night. They are not related, right? So don't think because people are smart that they might not kill you, because that's not the case, right? They're not related. So it's important to know where we are, and it's important to help our clients kind of figure it out too, like, okay, what's really going on? Let's really sit here and talk about it for a minute. Let's figure out how you got here in the first place. It's okay to be mad. It's okay to be sad. It's okay to be angry. It's not okay to make other people feel it the way you're doing it, right? Let's unpack this. Let's talk about it. So like I said, I can talk all year about emotional intelligence. I absolutely adore this topic. But we highlighted this TED Talk, TED UC Irvine. It's 19 minutes, but it is worth every minute. If we had time, I would make you guys watch it right now. I don't have time. So if you can and when you can, break it up, take time, but it is really amazing. But as work readiness, self-care hygienist, right? It's important to have a balance between EQ, IQ, right? You have to have both. You can't be really smart and impulsive. You can't be impulsive and not smart, right? You have to find that balance. So I think that when it comes to self-care,
if you're not taking care of yourself, your emotions are going to be all over the place, right? You have to figure out a way to regulate. Self-care is key. That way you can increase your emotional intelligence so that you're making the right decisions on behalf of your clients, right? With your clients. Gerald, you want to add something to this?
Yeah, I just think it's key, Kenya, that we talked about it earlier, but I think you have to take a holistic approach for yourself, not just your clients. So the holistic approach of who you are and what's going to help you become the person that you want to become, not just in a profession, but in your daily life, you know, with your kids, with your spouses, with your friends, significant others. So you need to take in stock and evaluate everything about you that would make you the person you want to become. Not only just the intelligent portion, but the emotional portion as well. That's a valid, holistic approach that you need to take that would make you a holistic person and a better person.
Most definitely. And if every day you show up to work mad, this might not be the profession for you. If every single client is making you upset or it's every single client's fault, this might not be the profession for you, right? Choose happiness, right? Know yourself too. If you know that a certain population triggers you, if you don't believe in war and you're assigned to vets, might not be the right fit, right? You might need to talk to your supervisor like, hey, I get triggered, this, right? That's emotional intelligence, knowing what takes you there, right? And communicating that, right? Awesome stuff. Okay, where are we at with time? 4:10, let me wrap it up, speed it up a little bit. So we all know and understand the importance of cultural competency. It's really, really important to understand the lens of your clients. And there is a homeless culture. And I don't think we don't probably talk about it enough, but if you have generational homelessness in your family, there's a certain mindset that you have with that. So when you say cultural competency, people think Black, white, Asian, right? They think just the basics, but cultural competency is deeper than that, right? It's all of the other stuff. Maybe it's a non-able-bodied individual. Maybe it's a single mother trying to get her kids back from CPS. There's a culture behind that. And it's not a race thing, right? So knowing what that person is coming to, how that person is coming into the space is cultural competency, right? I feel as though people talk about it very binary, and it's not. It's a fluid space. So we wanted to put this up here. And when you have a moment, check out these videos and challenge yourself to think outside the norm when you talk about cultural competency. When you're sitting with a client that is fresh out of San Quinn who used to use, that's the culture. Prison culture is a culture. Drug addiction is a culture, right? So step outside of the box when it comes to cultural competencies and look at who your client really is and all their cross-sectional cultures, right? Maybe they're a biker. That's a culture, biker culture, right? So, and figure out what, sorry, my coworker said, maybe he likes to swim. Maybe he does like to swim. That swim culture. Thank you, Nairobi. She just graduated from kindergarten, y'all. But all that to say, challenge yourself on what various cultures and cross cultures look like, right? So I'm going to go ahead and pass the mic to Omar. Me and Gerald have been talking for some time now. Omar, you still here?
Yep, I'm still here. Hello, everybody. Thank you for handing this off, Kenya. So one thing that we want to, talk about before we hop into the videos is, because the videos are going to sort of hit on some of these points is, we really want to be intentional about having a strategic approach to what personal growth actually looks like, right? And in order to track progress and understand if you're moving the needle in the right direction for what personal growth looks like for you, especially knowing that everyone has, you know, a different idea of what growth and success looks like for them. We have this this flow chart, and I come from a design background, and so this really also reminded me of what the design process looks like, right? So when we're thinking about, you know, design and being intentional about strategy on how to build something that's better than what you're operating at now, you have to follow a process, right? So it's like the Joel Embiid quote, like, trust the process, right? So in order to really think about, you know, what is it that I'm actually doing that's making things good? And also, what am I doing that are making things bad in terms of all the different buckets and pillars that we compartmentalize things in with life, right? And so the first is, you know, you're understanding your belief or your idea, or your thought around what it is that you're focusing on, right? Then thinking about, you know, what's the plan? Like, what's the call to action? What are we doing to put the right pieces of support in place? Or, you know, how are we actually going to figure out how to do things better, right? And then executing on that, right? So the next would be actually doing all the things, and then coming to a result, right? And then after the result, right, we want to take a step back and look at, you know, were my assumptions valid in this point, right? Did this thing actually work? Or maybe this thing, you know, didn't work, and, you know, start digging into like why that is, right? And so I think it's really important for us to be honest, right? And understand why certain things work and are good for us in terms of personal growth, and why some things don't. Right. And the only way to be able to validate the assumptions is to actually do it and track it and measure it. Right. And so it's the same thing with, like, you know, tracking your clients through your process, right? What things in our process were helpful, and, you know, maybe what were some things that are in our process that were maybe a barrier or a roadblock even. And so definitely having that similar approach to how you're moving your clients through your own pipeline, like you can use that same methodology in terms of moving forward for yourself, right? So yeah, Kenya, if you would mind playing the first video to the left, that would be great.
Awesome. So the clip, she talks about basic relationships, but apply it to whatever, because we're not just our jobs, but also as it applies to your clients, and how sometimes giving is not always the same as receiving, right? So just to set it up a little bit.
You understand health metaphor to help you understand love and why people can't always be what you want them to be. In life, there are two types of people. There are pint people and there are teacup people. As a pint person in a relationship, you tend to give it everything you can. You really give it your all. But you might be in a relationship with a teacup person who still tries really hard but might not be able to give the same amount as you. As always, you give the person in the relationship everything you can. And while they might appreciate it, it might overwhelm them and overfill, and they might not be able to know what to do with it all. But as a pint person, you expect all of it back, so they try to give it all back to you, but it still doesn't fill you up. What does this show us? This shows us that there's different levels, and even though our expectations of somebody might be really high, they might not be able to physically, mentally, or emotionally fill those expectations. So we need to ask ourselves whether we're in a relationship or a friendship. Are we able to recognize and accept that person's level, or do we need to find somebody at the same level as us?
Yeah, so I mean, I think that video really just embodies a lot of, I think, what we go through just being service providers, right? Knowing the level of intentionality and how bad we want certain things for other people, right? But then also, you know, sometimes that energy is not reciprocated, and understanding that that might make you feel some type of way, and really just, you know, again, going back to just being intentional, right? Building trust, understanding, knowing how much to give and how much to receive is really important when we're thinking about how we're working with clients. And then at the same time, how we're managing our own personal relationships as well, right? Because, you know, you could be going through it with somebody else and bringing that into work, or you can, you know, maybe feel a little bit let down by a client, and then take that out on the people that you're dealing or interfacing with outside of work, right? And so I think that's just like a really strong point to highlight, right? And like, how are we, how much are we pouring into people, and then how much are we being understanding about how much they're pouring back into us, right? And being able to, understand, where people are at, because essentially, like, that's what we're doing. We're meeting people where they're at in order to help get them to understand how to move forward, right? And so if you come in super motivated and you're pouring everything into them, and then they're not even, communicating back to you, no matter what, you're going to feel a certain type of way, right? And maybe if you started with like a bite-sized snippet of something and gave that to them, and then they were able to internalize that and give you something back, that would be, that ideally is where we want to be, what state we want to be operating in. And we can head on to the next slide. And then can we play this, the video at the top, please?
I'm a person that struggled with every aspect of healthcare you can imagine my entire life. And then
Oh, and Kenya, can you actually start it? It's going to go from 4:50 or 4:15 to 7:46.
Million bits of information. Anyone want to take a guess at how much of that information your conscious attention can handle? It's about 60 bits. 60. The other 99.9994% of what's happening around you, what's happening inside you right now, is being processed by parts of your brain that are operating largely unconsciously. And all of that experience might not ever filter its way up to your conscious attention. So what do we do with all of that? Because so much of the quality of your daily life will be determined by how you invest and manage this precious resource of your conscious attention. Especially now, when more than ever, thanks to the miracles of modern technology, you can be texting while driving, while swiping right, while ordering Seamless, while Skyping, while live streaming the season finale of The Bachelor. More things than ever are vying for this precious 60-bit bandwidth. So what do? We multitask. We take this little conscious attention and we try to spread it out among everything so that we don't have to miss anything. But one of the things I'm here to tell you today is you suck at multitasking. And so do I. Welcome to the club. Because the kind of multitasking that I just described, it doesn't actually exist. It's a cognitive illusion. Sort of like the way when you go to a movie, you know what's happening on the screen is just picture, 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 picture. But it feels like movement, and you don't ever second guess it. In a similar way, when you're multitasking in the way that I just talked about, what's actually happening inside your brain is that your conscious attention is ping-ponging back and forth from one thing to another again and again and again and again. And this all happens so fast that you can't even notice it. It's like the greatest trick the mind ever played was to fool itself. Now, one of the things that we know is that when we engage in this kind of behavior, psychologists call it task switching, and when we do it, we're actually worse at just about everything we do. So we multitask to try and do more things faster, and most often, we tend to take more time and perform worse in the process. One study that literally followed people around throughout their workday found that when we get interrupted in a task, we probably won't return to it for an average of 23 minutes, sometimes more. Now, I talk about this all the time, and I know that there is at least one person in the room right now who is raising an objection and going, wait, I multitask all the time, and I am super good at it. Maybe you all have problems, but I have got this down. And we have a study just for you. Because no great surprise, the people who do this kind of multitasking feel like they're the best at it, and we find that they actually tend to perform the worst. Perhaps even more troubling, we see some really disturbing side effects to this kind of behavior. We multitask to handle the stress of too much on our plate, but multitasking behavior actually raises our stress levels. It increases the levels of the stress hormone cortisol in our bloodstream. And this kind of behavior is also hugely correlated with impulsiveness and low self-control. It turns out that what we're doing is not training our minds to spread far and wide. We're training ourselves to become distracted.
All right. So, you know, when I was thinking about, you know, all the different types of self-care and all of the things that we're intaking as, you know, human beings, like the stimulus that we intake, there's so many things that are, you know, that are going on. I feel like it's really hard to be able to really create a personal growth plan for every bucket, right? I know I get caught up in multitasking all the time, way too often, and it definitely slows me down and it stresses me out. And I think when we're thinking about the types of self-care and what we want to prioritize, everyone's journey is different, right? Everyone's priorities are different. Some people, you know, you might be great at the physical aspect of self-care, but your emotional side of self-care is lacking, right? And so when I was thinking about how like I would approach this situation if you know me, I was like really trying to buckle down and move the needle in certain aspects. Really being you know, honest with what are the things that are important to me that I need to do better at, and what are the things that, you know, might be my growth areas, right? And so instead of avoiding, you know, those growth areas, right, in your self-care journey, right, because of emotions that, you know, might come up that you don't like, right, really being intentional about focusing in on the, you know, that one work plan, right, that one personal growth model for, you know, maybe your social or your financial or your work or maybe your home space, right, and really applying that growth model to certain types of self-care that are going to help benefit you and help you show up as your best self as often as possible, right? And so you know, it's just really fascinating that our brain is able to intake so much stimulus, but we can't process all of it, right? And so think about what that does to your emotions. Think about what that does to your stress, right? Think about the ways that you know, now is how you respond to other things that are coming in. And you know, then you got to tie in, you know, balance, right? Working and, you know, raising children and having, you know, relationships, and all of those things are draining, and there's all these stimuli that are coming in from all those different channels. And so I think it's really hard to focus in on like one of these buckets or all of these buckets if you know, haven't necessarily mastered ones already, right? And so when we're thinking about, you know, our journey around self-care and our personal growth model, right, we have to be really intentional. We cannot multitask during this process because one, we'll just forget about it, right? To be honest, like that's one of the things that's like, it's not going to be super high priority, even though it should be, right? If you're working on all 8 of these different types of self-care at the same time, there's no way you're going to be, you know, you're going to be doing as best you could, right? You're like spread too thin. It's like, you know, jack of all trades, but master of none, right? And that's not actually helpful, right? But if you can focus on maybe 1 or 2 or maybe 3, depending on, you know, how dedicated you are to this, there's definitely a lot of benefits in terms of just how you're feeling about all the stimulus that you're taking in. Yeah, we can play the second one now. Thank you.
If you are somebody who has a lot of anxiety or you find that you spend a lot of time worrying, I'm a psychotherapist and I have a proven trick for you. In cognitive behavioral therapy, we use something called scheduling a worry time. And this is when you pick one time, the same time, every single day for 30 minutes just to worry about everything that happened that day. So let's say you pick 4:30 every single day. Throughout the day, while things are happening and you start to worry about them, you remind those thoughts, I will meet you at our appointment at 4:30. And by the time you get to that appointment at 4:30, you will realize that you can't remember everything you were worrying about because it wasn't that important to begin with. Studies are showing that this takes about 2 weeks to work, but it works because worrying can be endless and limitless, and we can just spend all day doing it. So by taking a specific time and telling our minds that that is our appointment, it really helps us crunch everything into that time.
I just love that. I just love that because I'm kind of a worry ward and I have anxiety issues, right? But Gerald, we had a client that gave us a statement. What was that statement? It was anxiety is depression is ruminating about the past and anxiety is ruminating about the future. And the best way to regulate all that is to live in the present. Learn that from a client.
Yeah, wow, that's really powerful. If you think about that and if you could actually really apply that. One thing that came up for me after hearing about that is one, just the intentionality around, okay, I have a dedicated time to really sift through the stimuli that I took in today that made me feel, that worried me, right? I was thinking instantly, like, if we were to actually practice this and incorporate the personal growth model, I would be checking my personal growth model status right after that, right? Like, how did this affect or, negatively or maybe even positively? Maybe it worried you into doing something great, right? And so, thinking about how we can have like a strength-based or a positive approach about the things that are coming in that are worrying us, right? Because, if you're nervous or you're worried, it's because you care, right? And so that's like a positive thing. So how do we sort of change the narrative around, feeling anxious or feeling nervous, right? And making it into actually a strength and understanding what are those characteristics or attributes that are adding value, right, to, how you take care of yourself. All right. So
We have a request in the chat, I think to Kenya, to just, could you type in the chat that thing you said about the phrase that you said?
Sure. Actually, Gerald, can you type it in? Thank you.
All right, so we're actually going to put this all into action, right? This is our call to action now. As you guys have taken in, this hour and a half of self-care hygiene information, we want to have you guys sit back and think about this and actually, do this really quick, right? So on the screen, we have an example of a self-care plan. And we want you to, sit back and, jot this down in your notebook, right? Or just think on it, or, if you're into like, open up a Word doc, whatever you want, right? And pick an area, right? Personal, professional, organizational, right? And run through this self-care plan and really, dive into it. Think about, all the things that, support and energize me, and, who's involved and what is currently in place and what steps do I need to take now, right? And do this for yourself really quickly. We'll give you about 5 minutes. Once you have everything jotted down, feel free to, blast the chat with it, or if you want to raise your hand and share, if you feel compelled to share, please do so.
Hey folks, thanks for coming back.
Cool. Is anyone compelled to share, maybe just really quickly? if not, share out loud, maybe in the chat. It'd be cool to see some of the responses and see what folks were thinking about when it came down to their, their personal growth model.
Yeah. And we're also gonna get 3 more breakout rooms back in about 2 seconds. There we go. They were on a timer.
I always love how we're always talking like we get cut off right at the great conversation.
Hey, how come every time we end a breakout group, John's the one talking though? That's my favorite part. I mean, I was actually going to try to put some people on the spot right now and ask, how the session went, and if there was anything, if anyone felt like they were compelled and wanted to share, we would love to give you the space to listen in on what this looks like for you.
I'll share, Omar. Part of the San Jose team, JobTrain. So I'll share. Okay, so I stated that during my lunch, I enjoy going for walks. And then my pet peeve after work is do some online shopping. It's been a little bit of my pet peeve during this COVID. So since you can't go shopping at the malls during the time, it's all about the free shipping.
That's self-care right there.
There you go.
Little retail therapy.
Exactly.
You know, one thing that first of all, I think I had the best group. I'm gonna, you know me, I got to hype the peeps up, but I got so much out of it because it's funny how all our self-care revolves around either things we love, people we love, animals that we love, and it was just pretty cool seeing how we all had that little bit in common. But one person that was talking, and I mean, it was actually Alexandra, and if she wants to unmute, I would love to hear a little bit about your self-care that you were talking about, because you hit it on point. You tapped into the friends, you tapped into the family, and I mean, that was excellent. I love the fact that we had in our group too, talking about just going home and sitting down with the family. You never hear about that in a busy life. So, but that's it. I mean, you guys were all great.
Awesome. Thank you, Vanessa and John, for sharing. Anybody else, a non-job trainee-act that would like to jump in here before we head out, before we close out here?
Now I feel like Alexandra, you gotta unmute now. He put you on blast.
Put me on blast. I was just, well, we only had like a couple seconds, so he wanted we kind of like dove in it really quick, and then I got cut off, so I think that's why. Basically helping your friends to also have self-care for themselves, because not only doing it for yourself, but helping others learn that they need to self-care and they're doing a lot, and it's okay to take a step back and reflect on your life and what's going on around you. And you can't be Superwoman or Superman and do everything together. You're one person, whether it's being a single parent or losing someone that you love, or something is going on in your life. We all have things that go on in our life and nobody knows. And to have a friend that is there for you in time of need, or even to just tell you, take time for yourself, take a couple minutes out of your day, go outside, work outside, and take some fresh air. If you can't give your own self-care, how can you care for somebody else and your clients? And how can you work efficiently if you're not even there all together for yourself? So me and my best friend, we do that a lot. We tag team on each other of like, you need to do this, you need to do that, like holding each other accountable and not telling them what they need to hear. Telling them what they need to hear, not what they want to hear. Like really getting into like pretty much being on them about doing self-care and not giving them what they want to hear. Like really diving in and telling them like, hey, step back, like you can't do it all, relax, like it's gonna be okay, you know, and kind of pushing them to that. So yeah. Me and my friend do that a lot. So even though we're far away, we still tag team on each other. And
Self-care buddy.
It's good to have a supportive system like that, especially when you don't come from a background of your own family supporting you. It's different when you have a best friend like that that really supports you and is there for you and builds up your self-confidence, because it's kind of hard when your own family doesn't support you.
Right. Well, thank you so much
Gosh,
for
guys.
sharing.
Go,
I'm
go.
so glad you got a self-care buddy. That is amazing.
Alexander, I told you you're awesome. See?
Drop the
Awesome
mic.
sauce.
Boom.
Okay, can you guys see my screen? All right. And of course, question and answer in our virtual drop-in hours. We always end with that. Does anybody have any questions about anything that we went over today? Anything.
Can you go back to that?
Fastest way to get your clients through that queue.
Thank you. I want to.
Oh, sure.
This.
Drop-in hours. And we will be sending out the PDF. So all of the links are hyperlinked. Click around, please share. Take this information to your client. 1 second. Because that's the reason why we entitled it Work Readiness, because our clients need to understand that self-care is a part of work readiness. Us as service providers, that is a part of showing up ready to go, right? Being checked in within ourselves and bringing our whole selves to the table, right? So with that being said, it is almost top of the hour. You guys were amazing. Thank you so much for your time. I'm going to go ahead and pass the mic to Eli.
Yeah, just thank you so much. I want to plug, Mark put a link in the chat to a feedback survey, and we would love for you to complete that. If you click the link now, you'll be able to do it now, and it shouldn't take you much longer than a minute or two, and we would love for you to do that.